What's up, Logan? We will begin shortly. I just got home. I think I'm going to get high again on stream because it went so well last time. Oh. Oh. Gee whiz. Oh god, this book's so inviting. I really wish I could show you all the pictures. Our man Dumbledore. How is the chat? How is the chat? Let's get some likes in here, chat. All right, I'll begin in 1 second. Last time was a great chapter. I want to keep reading, bruh. And there's like a 10-year time skip. There's a 10-year time skip, ladies and gentlemen, from the first to the second chapter. First chapter. Who can tell me the first chapter? What's the first chapter's name? Does anybody in chat remember? Five points for Gryffindor. I mean, to whichever house can name it first. The name of five points to Gryffindor, or the fuck, Miss Braden Sabo, whoever this user is. 5 points to his house. Chapter 2 is known as The Vanishing Glass, which is obvious if you know the story or if you're familiar with what happens. And just by the title, does anybody know? Does anybody remember what the title, The Vanishing Glass, is referencing? Very famous. Most people probably already know it because it's a famous scene in movie history too, I feel. Why did it have to be snakes? The snake is going to appear in this episode. Snakes historically have ties to the occult and sorcery and shit like that, so it makes sense that early on they were always a thing in Harry Potter, always. Especially in the second book, they really become the main focus because there's a giant fucking snake let loose in Hogwarts. It's it's probably my favorite one. When I was a little kid, I always said, whenever I only read them one time, my first read through, I was the second one is my favorite. The Chamber of Secrets is my favorite. It was for the longest time. And I don't know, something about Goblet of Fire, bruh. That's just a perfect book, really. It kind of sucks though that Ron and Harry are fighting though in that one, because that shit was kind of cringe sometimes. But she had to do it eventually. If they had to have a fight, and it's just it it's a part of life. I mean, it's growing up. Harry Potter is about growing up. Overall, the overall theme is growing up. It's pretty much a life's journey because, spoilers, but at the very last chapter, it's 30. It's a 30-year time skip. I don't, not 30 years, but Harry's a father. That is true. Well, whatever. He knows. Try to let us knows. But anyway, yeah, there is lots of time skips actually. Well, there's usually the time skip is it depends really, because it's just it usually the books ends when the school year ends, which is when the school years end in real life, around before slightly before summer, because the books always begin with summer, because every book starts the same way of Harry going off to school. Whoa. This book's so good. Okay, I will begin shortly. I also, when like talking about spoilers, first of all, like I've just been Harry Potter's has been like my whole life, so I just assume that everybody else like knows the story and like loves it or whatever. But secondly, like I don't know, is it still in like the spoiler territory? Has it been enough time? Has enough time passed? Because when did Deathly Hollows drop? Like early 2000s, yeah, mid 2000s. I want to say like 2007. Let's actually look it up here. Deathly Hollows book release date. I was right. Yeah, 2007. So yeah, I don't know. Like what else came out in like 2007 that we could compare it to? Yeah, I guess it is safe to spoil, but still though, like I'll try not to spoil like big shit. Exactly, like it's a pop culture like touchstone. Really, it probably is like the most famous like I don't books series ever. Maybe I don't know. Like most easily accessible because like it's like I don't know because everybody reads or I don't know. It's like really mainstream. I guess is the thing. Like a lot of people just read Harry Potter because like it's just like a great book and also it's just like it has a lot of depth to it too though and like it's really easy to read. Like even my sister who like never reads anything like she was reading Harry Potter like she was like breezing through it like she was like she was saying how like she'd never like gotten like this into a book like ever, and I was like, damn. But yeah, Harry Potter is amazing. But I think we shall begin. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Chapter 2 The Vanishing Glass. Nearly 10 years had passed since the Dursleys had woken up to find their nephew on the front step, but Privet Drive had hardly changed at all. The sun rose on the same tidy front gardens that lit up the brass number 4 on the Dursleys' front door. It crept into the living room, which was almost exactly the same as it had been on the night when Mr. Dursley had heard that fateful news about the news report about the owls. Only the photographs on the mantelpiece really showed how much time had passed. 10 years ago, there had been lots of pictures of what looked like a large pink beach ball wearing different colored bobble hats. But Dudley Dursley was no longer a baby, and now the photograph showed a large blond boy riding his first bicycle on a roundabout riding his first bicycle on a roundabout at the fair, playing a computer game with his father, being hugged and kissed by his mother. The room held no sign at all that another boy lived in the house too. Harry getting shit on immediately. Yeah, Harry Potter was still there, asleep at the moment, but not for long. His Aunt Petunia was awake, and it was her shrill voice which made the first sound of the day. Up! Get up! Now! Harry woke with a start. His aunt rapped on the door again. Up! She screeched. Harry heard her walking towards the kitchen, and then the sound of the frying pan being put on the cooker. He rolled on his back and tried to remember the dream he had been having. It had been a good one. There had been a flying motorcycle on it. He had a funny feeling he had the same dream before. His aunt was back outside the door. Are you up yet? She demanded. Nearly, said Harry. Well, get a move on. I want you to look after the bacon, and don't you dare let it burn. I want everything perfect on Dudley's birthday. Harry groaned. What'd you say? His aunt snapped through the door. Nothing, nothing. Dudley's birthday. How could he have forgotten? Harry got slowly out of bed and started looking for his socks. He found a pair under his bed, and after pulling a spider off of them, he put them on. Harry was used to spiders because the cupboard under the stairs was full of them, and that was where he slept. When he was dressed, he went down the hall to the kitchen. The table was almost hidden beneath all of Dudley's birthday presents. It looked as though Dudley had gotten the new computer he wanted, not to mention the second television and the racing bike. Exactly why Dudley wanted a racing bike was a mystery to Harry, as Dudley was very fat and hated exercise, unless of course it involved punching somebody. Dudley's favorite punching bag was Harry, but he couldn't often catch him. Harry didn't look it, but he was very fast. Perhaps it had something to do with living in a cupboard, but Harry had always been small and skinny for his age. He looked even smaller and skinnier than he really was because all he had to wear were old clothes of Dudley's, and Dudley was about 4 times bigger than he was. Harry had a thin face, knobbly knees, black hair, and bright green eyes. He wore round glasses held together with a lot of scotch tape because of all the times Dudley had punched him on the nose. The only thing Harry looked about the only thing Harry liked about his own appearance was a very thin scar on his forehead, which was shaped like a bolt of lightning. He had had it as long as he could remember, and the first question he could ever remember asking his Aunt Petunia was how he had got it. "In the car crash when your parents died," she said. "And don't ask questions." Don't ask questions. That was the first rule for a quiet life with the Dursleys. Uncle Vernon entered the kitchen. Entered the kitchen as Harry was turning over the bacon. "Comb your hair," he barked, by way of morning greeting. About once a week, Uncle Vernon looked over the top of his newspaper and shouted that Harry needed a haircut. Harry must have had many haircuts than the rest of the boys in his class put together, but it made no difference. His hair simply grew that way, all over the place. Harry was frying eggs by the time Dudley arrived in the kitchen with his mother. Dudley looked a lot like Uncle Vernon. He had a large pink face, not much neck, small, watery blue eyes, and thick blonde hair that lay smooth on his thick, fat head. Aunt Petunia often said that Dudley looked like a baby angel. Harry often said that Dudley looked like a pig in a wig. Damn. Harry put the plate of egg and bacon on the table, which was difficult as there wasn't much room. Dudley, meanwhile, was kind in his presence. His face fell. 36, he said, looking up at his mother and father. "That's 2 less than last year." "Darling, you haven't counted Aunt Marge's present. See, it's here under this big one from Mummy and Daddy." "All right, 37 then," said Dudley, going red in the face. Harry, who could see a huge Dudley tantrum coming on, began wolfing down his bacon as fast as possible in case Dudley turned the table over. Aunt Petunia obviously scented danger too, because she said quickly, "And we'll buy you another 2 presents while we're out today. How's that, Popkin? 2 more presents. Is that all right?" And Dudley thought for a moment. It looked like hard work. Finally, he said slowly, "So I'll have 30, 30, 39 sweetums," said Aunt Petunia. "Oh." Dudley sat down heavily and grabbed the nearest parcel. "All right, then." Uncle Vernon chuckled. "Little Tyke wants his money's worth, just like his father. Attaboy, Dudley." He ruffled Dudley's hair. At that moment, the telephone rang, and Aunt Petunia went to answer it while Harry and Uncle Vernon watched Dudley unwrap the racing bike, a cine camera, a remote control airplane, 16 new computer games, and a video recorder. He was ripping the paper off a gold wristwatch when Aunt Petunia came back from the telephone, looking both angry and worried. "Bad news, Vernon," she said. "Mrs. Figg's broken her leg. She can't take him." She jerked her head in Harry's direction. Dudley's mouth fell open in horror, but Dudley's heart gave a leap. Every year on Dudley's birthday, his parents took him and a friend out for the day to adventure parks, hamburger bars, and the cinema. Every year, Harry was left behind with Mrs. Figg, a mad old lady who lived 2 streets away. Harry hated it there. The whole house smelled of cabbage, and Mrs. Figg made him look at photographs of all the cats she's ever owned. We learned later, much later, like in Order of the Phoenix, like who she really is. Like she was like actually like a wizard in disguise, like protecting Harry, I think. "Now what?" said Aunt Petunia, looking fiercely at Harry as though he planned this. Harry knew he ought to feel sorry that Mrs. Figg had broken her leg, but it wasn't easy when he reminded himself it would be a whole year before he had to look at Tibble, Snowy, Mr. Paws, and Tufty again. "We could phone Marge," Uncle Vernon suggested. "Don't be silly, Vernon. She hates the boy." Is that Aunt Marge that he blows up? The Dursleys often spoke about Harry like this, as though he wasn't there, or rather, as though he was something very nasty they couldn't understand, like a slug. Damn, it sucks to be Harry. "What about what's your name, your friend?" Yavone, her husband in Margica," snapped Petunia. "You couldn't just leave. You could just leave me here," Harry put in hopefully. "He'd be able to watch what he wanted on television for a change, or might even get to use Dudley's new computer." Aunt Petunia looked as though she just swallowed a lemon. "And come back and find the house in ruins," she snarled. "I won't blow up the house," said Harry, but they weren't listening. "I suppose we can't take him to the zoo," said Aunt Petunia slowly, "and leave him in the car. That car's new. He's not staying in it alone." Damn. I'd be like, what the fuck did I do to like make you assume this shit about me? He doesn't even know about magic at this point, and as far as we know, he hasn't done. He hasn't shown his magic yet. Uh, Dudley began to cry loudly. In fact, he wasn't really crying. It had been years since he really cried, but he knew that if he swallowed up his face and wailed, his mother would give him anything he wanted. "Dinky Duddums, don't cry. Mommy won't let him spoil your special day," she cried, flinging her arms around him. "I don't want him to come," Dudley yelled between huge pretend sobs. "He always spoils everything." He shot Harry a nasty grin through the gap in his mother's arms. "What a little bitch. We hate Dudley." Just then, the doorbell rang. "Oh, good lord, they're here," said Aunt Petunia frantically. And a moment later, Dudley's best friend, Piers Blocus, walked in with his mother. Pierce was a scrawny boy with a face like a rat. He was usually the one who held people's arms behind their backs while Dudley hit them. Dudley stopped pretending to cry at once. Half an hour later, Harry, who couldn't believe his luck, was sitting in the back of the Dursleys' car with Pierce and Dudley, on the way to the zoo for the first time in his life. His aunt and uncle hadn't been able to think of anything else to do with him, but before they left, Uncle Vernon had taken Harry aside. "I'm warning you," he said, pointing his large purple face right up close to Harry's. "I'm warning you now, boy. Any funny business, anything at all, and you'll be in that cupboard from now until Christmas." "I'm not going to do anything," said Harry. "Honestly." But Uncle Vernon didn't believe him. No one ever did. The problem was, strange things often happened around Harry, and it was just no good. Oh. Doi, 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 doi. The problem was, strange things often happened around Harry, and it was just no good telling the Dursleys he didn't make them happen. Oh. And once Aunt Petunia, tired of Harry's coming back from the barber's, looking as though he hadn't been at all, had taken a pair of kitchen scissors and cut his hair so short he was almost bald except for his fringe, which he held to hide that horrible scar. Horrible scar. Dudley had laughed himself silly at Harry, who spent a sleepless night imagining school the next day, where he was already laughed at for his baggy clothes and sellotape glasses. Next morning, however, he had gone up to find his hair exactly as it had been before Aunt Petunia had sheared it off. He had been given a week in his cupboard for this, even though he had tried to explain that he couldn't explain how it had grown back so quickly. Another time, Aunt Petunia had been trying to force him into a revolting old jumper of Dudley's, brown with orange baubles. What? The harder she tried to pull it over his head, the smaller it seemed to become, until finally it began to have fitted a glove puppet, but certainly wouldn't fit Harry. Aunt Petunia had decided it must have been shrunk in the wash, and to his great relief, Harry wasn't punished. On the other hand, he got into trouble for being found on the roof of the school kitchens. Dudley's gang had been chasing him as usual, as much as Harry's surprise as everybody else's. As usual, when, as much to Harry's surprise as everyone else's, there he was sitting on the chimney. The Dursleys had received a very angry letter from Harry's headmistress telling them that Harry had been climbing school buildings. But all he tried to do, as he shouted at Uncle Vernon through the locked door in his cupboard, was jump behind the big bins outside the kitchen doors. You suppose that the wind must have caught him mid-jump. Bruh. I'd be like, you're a wizard, bro. But today, nothing was going to go wrong. It was even worth being with Dudley and Pierce to be spending the day somewhere that wasn't school, his cupboard, or Mrs. Figg's cabbage-smelling living room. While he drove, Uncle Vernon complained to Aunt Petunia. He liked to complain about things. People at work, Harry, the council, Harry, the bank, and Harry were just a few of his favorite subjects. This morning, it was motorbikes. "Roaring along like maniacs, the young hoodlums," he said, as a motorbike overtook them. I had a dream about a motorbike, said Harry, remembering suddenly. It was flying. I go over and nearly crashed into the car in front. He turned right around in his seat and yelled at Harry, his face like a giant beetroot with a mustache. Motorbikes don't fly! And Dudley and Pierce sniggered. I know they don't, said Harry. It was only a dream. But he wished he hadn't said anything. If there was one thing the Dursleys hated even more than his asking questions, it was just talking about anything acting in a way it shouldn't, no matter if it was a dream or even a cartoon. They seemed to think he might get dangerous ideas. It was a very sunny Saturday and the zoo was crowded with families. The Dursleys the Dursleys bought Dudley and Pierce large chocolate ice cream at the entrance, and then, because the smiling lady in the van had asked Harry what he wanted before they could hurry him away, they bought him a cheap lemon ice lolly. It wasn't bad either, Harry thought, looking at as they watched a gorilla scratching his head and looked remarkably like Dudley, except that he wasn't blonde. Harry had the best morning he'd had in a long time. He was careful to watch a long way apart from the Dursleys so that Dudley and Pierce, who were starting to get bored with the animals by lunchtime, won't fall back on their favorite hobby of hating him. They ate at the zoo, and when Dudley had a tantrum because his Knickerbocker glory wasn't big enough, Uncle Vernon bought him another one, and Harry was allowed to finish first. It's gross. I won't touch anything that Dudley ate. Uh-oh. This is where it begins. Harry felt afterwards that he should have known it was all too good to last. After lunch, they went to the reptile house. It was cool and dark in here, with lit windows all along the walls. Behind the glass, all sorts of lizards and snakes were crawling and slithering over bits of wood and stone. Dudley and Pierce wanted to see huge, poisonous cobras and thick, man-crushing pythons. Dudley quickly found the largest snake in the place. It wrapped its body twice around Uncle Vernon's car and crushed it into a dustbin. But at the moment, it didn't look like it was in the mood. In fact, it was fast asleep. Dudley stood with his nose pressed against the glass, staring at the glistening brown coils. Make it move, he wanted as father. Uncle Vernon tapped on the glass, but the snake wouldn't budge. Do it again, Dudley ordered. Uncle Vernon rapped the glass smartly with his knuckles, but the snake just snoozed on. This is boring, Dudley moaned. He shuffled away. Harry moved in front of the tank and looked intently at the snake. He wouldn't have been surprised if it had died of boredom itself. No company except stupid people drumming their fingers on the glass, trying to disturb it all day long. It was worse than having a cupboard as a bedroom, where the only visitor was Aunt Petunia hammering on the door to wake you up. At least he got to visit the rest of the house. The snake slowly opened his beady eyes. Slowly, very slowly, it raised its head until its eyes were on level with Harry's. It winked. Harry looking at the snake. Harry stared. Then he looked quickly around to see if anyone was watching. They weren't. He looked back at the snake and winked too. That's your first instinct is to wink back at it? I'd be like, what the fuck? That snake just winked at me, bro. The snake jerked its head towards Uncle Vernon and Dudley, then raised his eyes to the ceiling. It gave Harry a look that said quite plainly, I get that a lot. I get that all the time. I know, Harry murmured through the glass, but he wasn't sure the snake could hear him. It must be really annoying. The snake nodded vigorously. Where do you come from anyway? Harry asked, obviously. The snake jabbed his tail at a little sign next to the glass. Harry peered at it. Boa Constrictor, Brazil. Was it nice there? The boa constrictor jabbed his tail at the sign again and Harry read on. This specimen was bred in the zoo. Oh, I see. So you'd never been to Brazil? As the snake shook its head, a deafening shout behind Harry made both of them jump. Dudley, Mr. Dursley, come look at this snake. You won't believe what it's doing. Dudley came walking towards him as fast as he could. Out of the way, you, he said, punching Harry in the ribs. Caught by surprise, Harry felt hard on the concrete floor. What came next happened so fast, no one saw how it happened. 1 second, Pierce and Dudley were leaning right up to the glass. The next, they had leapt back with howls of horror. Harry sat up and gasped. The glass front of the boa constrictor's tank had vanished. The great snake was uncoiling itself rapidly, slithering out to the floor. People throughout the reptile house screamed and started running for the exits. As the snake slid swiftly past him, Harry could have sworn a low, hissing voice said, "Brazil, here I come. Thanks, amigo." The keeper of the reptile house was in shock. "But the glass," he kept saying. "Where'd the glass go?" The zoo director himself made Aunt Petunia a cup of strong, sweet tea while he apologized over and over again. Pearson and Dudley could only gibber. As far as Harry had seen, the snake hadn't done anything except snap playfully at their heels as it passed. But by the time they were all back in Uncle Vernon's car, Dudley was telling them how it had nearly bitten off his leg, while Pierce was swearing it had taken to squeeze him to death. But worst of all, for Harry at least, was Pierce calming down enough to say, "Harry was talking to it, weren't you, Harry?" Uh-oh. Uncle Vernon waited until Pierce was safely out of the house before staring at Harry. He was so angry he could barely speak. He managed to say, "Go, cupboard, stay, no meals." Before he collapsed into a chair, Aunt Petunia had to run him a large brandy. Harry lay in his dark cupboard much later, wishing he had a watch. He didn't know what time it was, and he couldn't be sure the Dudleys were asleep yet. Until they were, he couldn't risk sneaking to the kitchen for some food. He lived with the Dursleys almost 10 years, 10 miserable years, as long as he could remember, ever since he'd been a baby and his parents had died in that car crash. He couldn't remember being in the car when his parents had died. Sometimes, when he strained his memory during long hours in his cupboard, he came up with a strange vision. A blinding flash of green light and a burning pain in his forehead. This, he supposed, was the crash, but he couldn't imagine where all the green light had come from. He couldn't remember his parents at all. His aunt and uncle never spoke about them, and of course he was forbidden to ask questions. There were no photographs of them in the house. When he had been younger, Harry had dreamed and dreamed of some unknown relation coming to take him away, but it had never happened. The Dursleys were his only family. Yet sometimes he thought, or maybe hoped, that strangers in the street seemed to know him. Very strange strangers they were, too. A tiny man in a violet top hat had bowed to him once while out shopping with Aunt Petunia and Dudley. After asking Harry ferociously if he knew the man, Aunt Petunia had rushed him out of the shop without buying anything. A wild-looking old woman dressed all in green had waved merrily at him once in a bus. A bald man in a very low purple coat had actually shaken his hand in the street the other day and then walked away without a word. The weirdest thing about all these people was the way they seemed to vanish the second Harry tried to take a closer look. At school, Harry had no one. I love this book. At school, Harry had no one. Everybody knew that Dudley's gang hated that odd Harry Potter in his baggy old clothes and his broken glasses, and nobody liked to disagree with Dudley's gang. Oh shit, that was the chapter. Damn. So overall, guys, that chapter was just like showing us how terrible Harry's life is. Like Harry, like he's you gotta feel bad for Harry. It's impossible not to feel bad for Harry. How'd you guys like the chapter? Chapter 2. Next up, he gets his letter. Poor Harry. So Harry has shown signs of magic before, but nothing like that, I guess. So something I wanted to Now we're discussing. This is a very early look. The first time that we realized that Harry has a special connection with snakes, and this just seems like a common like wizard thing at first, but we will later learn that it's actually a little bit deeper than that. That I saw you speaking to the snake. I was like, oh yeah, well like in the second book, like speaking partial tongue, like the snakes speak a specific language that like not everybody knows. Like not every wizard is like a partial tongue or whatever. Like not everybody can just talk to snakes. Like it's a special thing that like only Harry and like Voldemort can do that I know of outside of my head. Yeah, it is a red flag. Like the founder of Slytherin's house, whatever the fuck his name is, whatever Slytherin, he was a partial tongue as well. But yeah, fuck Dudley. We hate Dudley. Is there anything else to discuss? I mean, these are just things that everybody knows about Harry. That like his life is terrible. I mean, he lives in a cupboard under the stairs, which is like barely any space at all. Like what the fuck? Salazar, indeed. Helga, Helga Hufflepuff. Rowena Ravenclaw. I'm probably saying that wrong. Rowena. Yeah, I know Godric, my boy. His sword saves the day in the second book. This is common knowledge. Well, guys, is that it? Anything else to say about the chapter before I hop off here? I mean, it was a good chapter. Rowling writes with like a children's book simplicity, but like she just describes a lot, like with her words. They're a great read. That snake was born there, it said. It was like, I'm born. Or it nodded at the sign. And he's like, oh, so you were born here. I try to give some of the voices like the English accent. Sometimes like with the lines. Oh, that is true. I see what you mean. He's gonna catch a plane or some shit. I don't know. That's funny. I don't know whatever happened to that snake. It'd be cool if he came back or something. But I think I'll leave y'all until next time. I can't wait to like dive in. Maybe like we'll read like 2 chapters next time. So we're gonna like dive into this shit. But okay, peace out, y'all. Thanks for dropping by.